Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all good tonight or this morning if you're in America. um, just wanted to say that I do these for Q&A to help people. The idea is that you can ask me any questions, and I'm also here to mix down your tracks for you if that's what you want. It's done live. You get a release ready record most of the time, depending on what needs to be done. So hit me up, DM, email me, info@subtonemusicacademy.com if you want me to mix your track live on one of these sessions. If you want to contact me regarding my one-to-one mentorships, fire away. As most of you know who follow me, I've had records on Defected, Tool Room, Subliminal, Ministry of Sound, Circus, all the big labels, Elrow, and a lot of stuff under my tech house guises. So a lot of 30 years experience making electronic music. And some of my ex-clients and people I work with are some of the biggest DJs in the world. So yeah, hit me up if you're interested. So please say hello in the comments. It'd be nice to see who's on board. I thought tonight I'd talk about gain staging. Now, I think it's quite simple gain staging because it is until it isn't. So the way I've taught people in the past, and the way I was taught, was go to -12 on your sound. Have your fader at 0, no plugins, and get your sound to 0, whether it's turning down the volume on the sampler or the synth, or going into the audio here and turning it down so that the fader says -12. Or going into it. So you go in, get this, turn it down here until it says -12 here. I'll show you that one actually. So you get the fader to 0, and you get it -5. So down -7, that should be all right. -5. Good. That was the wrong place, that's why. So you get it to about -12, and then your levels are fine. But I don't do that anymore. I mean, I still recommend it to people to avoid clipping, but I gain stage in a different way. So there's a few ways that you can do it. Okay. If you're mixing for loudness and you want to be able to hear it if it's distorting, what I normally do if I'm gain staging is get my kick, get it to 0, no plugins on the main out. And then what I do is I get the kick, and then what I'll do is I'll turn the kick up till it hits 0. And this is only when we're mixing for loudness. I'm doing this course right now as we talk about it. But what you do is if you're not using any analog emulations or anything like that, and you're quite confident that you can hear distortion to a degree, this is one of the ways to do it. But even if you're not, because we can always turn it down. So get it back to about 0, and then I start adding my sounds on them and start mixing to the kick. Okay. What does that mean? Well, the kick, where the kick hits, and I would say it's generally the drop if you're doing electronic music, where the kick hits, the white noise hits, the bass hits, whatever effects you've got on the drop and certain parts, like that's why we use an oscillator. That'll be the loudest part of the track. So what we're trying to do when we're mixing for loudness to keep it as brief as possible is we're trying to teach ourselves to hear distortion here. Okay, right. So what happens if it's distorting on the channel? Yeah, and then it's distorting here. Well, because all our faders are 32-bit float, the distortion that you think is happening here, if we turn it down here, we remove. Okay, so let me just show you quickly what I mean by that. Okay, you can hear the distortion on the top of it, can't you? I mean, distortion sounds quite good on the clap sometimes, so might not be the best example, but the distortion isn't happening at the channel because these are all 32-bit. The distortion is happening on the master bus. Okay, so if you turn this down, you're going to remove the clipping that was on the master bus. But the point is, you want to be pushing your mixes into the master limiter so you can start hearing when things are distorted. I mean, to be quite honest with you, the best example for listening to distortion is with a kick. I mean, you can really hear the distortion there, and you know it's not a good distortion, right? But we've got to train our ears, so you've got to do this a million times, okay? And the thing is, right, is if that's what you're doing, and you're pushing, you're not sure if it's clipping or not here, before you send it for mastering, just bring it down. Like -6 or whatever. So that your master engineer has got some headroom. But really, I never clip anywhere along here. Okay. So you've got the clip to 0 or go to 0, which is what we just saw then. Just use our ears. Gain staging doesn't matter as long as if it is distorted and you can hear it, then it's bad. But obviously, most of you don't know that. But you've got to push yourself into these boundaries, and I'm not perfect at this, to hear the distortion. Now, it's easy to hear the distortion on the kick, right? But the real problem to hear, and I still use master engineers for this reason, is to hear distortion on a whole mix when things are breaking up. Okay, we've got some tools that we can use to help us with that, to guide us, but really a lot of people I work with, they can't afford anything. They want to get the record sent out to someone. They want to turn it up, but they want to get it competitively loud. They send it to people, and then they say it's just like it's toast. So people ask me how to do it. I can't tell you in one answer. You've got to be able to do it a million times to train your ears. So with the kick there, you can hear as we pushed it, it distorted it. So the way I teach everything is this. So if I've got that kick there, okay, and I'm listening for distortion, let's just say we're using standard clip, okay? I'm going to use my ear. So I'm listening to what's the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, the high frequencies, the transient, the body of the sound, the tail of the sound, and the tone of the sound. And when I'm doing this, I'm something like kick, like I would use soft clippers. So I'd add a bit of saturation here, okay? And then what I would do is just bring this down. Obviously, level match always, that turns up. Okay, I can hear a really big distortion there. Oh, sorry about that. I've sorted out the double audio. Hi, Paul. Hi, Enoch. So, what I'm doing is I am clipping it. And what I'm doing is I'm listening to transient, I'm listening to distortion, the tone and the body and everything else, the bottom end of it. And it's, you know, a good way to start practicing is using a kick. See, that's obviously too loud anyway, that's clipping going into it. That's the kick straight. Okay, what's it doing there? Is it doing anything? No. A little bit of something happening there. Okay, so I can hear the distortion, but don't stop there. Go down. Then go back. And then go back until it sounds right. That sounds about right. Well, this is how you learn distortion. You know, you've just got to do it a million times. So it's the same with this. It's the same as clipping this. You know, does it sound worse? No. Does it? Well, then great. Do you know what I mean? Does it sound worse? It sounds different. Is it better or is it worse? It's worse. Right. Pull it back. So then what you can do is you can either create a channel beforehand, like I've done here with Premaster, and just start to turn it down there, because everything else has got your processing on. But teach yourself, you know, and if you want to really start learning it and tuning in, you can use Metric AB and go. It worked. No. Yeah. What you can do is you can A/B it to see if it sounds distorted, or what you can do is you can have a reference track and A/B it to that and see how yours sounds, and turn the plugins on and off, you know, that might be creating the distortion, and see if that's what it is. Or turn it down slightly and then see if the distortion goes. That's always a good thing, because the distortion might not be coming here, it might be coming somewhere else in a plugin. Okay, so right, so that's the way of doing it. The key to it is training your ears about hearing distortion, but giving yourself a fail safe where you can just turn the master fader down, or create a sub channel, you know, or a group. You know, like on this one, I might want to create another group because I've got plugins on it, and go like that. And G. That's obviously, to everybody else, it's a bus or something. An R submix. And if it is distorting, so I don't have to turn things down, just turn it down here because there's no plugins on it. Okay. This is my pre-master. So this is where I put stuff. Right. Any questions? So this is how I gain stage in 2026. Okay. Now I like to use analog emulations. I like to get them. I get them sounding good and everything else. So a lot of the time I have all drums. Okay. So what I do on my drums is this. I get my settings that I really like. So a slow attack, fast release. Okay. And I get my kick. Okay. Get my kick. And I get my optical to about -1 on the kick. Okay. Okay, because for me, when I've got all my drums in, that's the ideal level. Okay, If I listen to this now. Okay, obviously everything else is a different level now. So what I need to do is mix everything else into that kick. Okay, right. So let's just say we're working with just the kick now and we're adding everything else extra. So I've got the kick. It's going into this. Okay. And then I like to mix into a compressor on my pre-master. Right, whatever. So I've got this one here. It's not an analog emulation, but I'm going to put it on. Okay. Obviously, with everything playing, I would do this. And I'd make sure that's doing just about half a dB. I'm not bothered about really working this yet until I've finished the mix and then carving the compressor to work the mix a little better. But something that I like to do, you might have different things about how you want to do your mix down, is this. So I get an Oxford inflator, okay, and I have it about 81 and 27. And it changes. Take the clip off and I mix into it. So I'll do that so that I'm hitting my analog emulations at the right level, or even just compressors. And then what happens is this. Okay, so I'm never going to clip anyway, because that's, you know, with analog emulations, you know, it's about -12 to -16, the level that you want to be feeding them. So the question is, well, how do I know if I'm clipping? Because I've got loads of headroom. So I get my mix set up once I've got everything in to work into these. Well, when I start the track, I mix into those, okay? And once I've got everything in, or once I've got my kick in, I'll come here. I'll go to my master. If I'm mastering, I'll put on my pre-master what I like to mix into. I've got my compressor, got my Oxford inflator. I might have a tape machine. I might, you know, whatever you want to use. You know, the Slate Digital tape's good to mix into sometimes, or the UAD, whichever ones, whatever you like to mix into, you think it's going to sound the God particle, whatever, then you use it, right? Okay, but then what happens is you've gained stage for analog emulations. And if we look at this, the master output here, I've still got -14.9 dB of headroom. Okay, right. So what I do then is this. I get my kick. And I'll go just to about 0, okay? Then I'll bring the mix in one by one. And what this does is, it makes me hit distortion really quickly. So as I'm adding everything into the kick, the first thing that I'm going to do after I've done this is then use a standard clip or a soft clipper or a hard clipper on the kick, depending on what it needs. And that's going to reduce this number anyway and give me a dB or 2 of headroom, okay? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add, you know, I'll probably add the bass first because that's quite loud. You know. And what I'll do is I'll go, well, there's 2.92 dB of overlaps there. Now you might think, oh, that's 2 dB, but sometimes it's not like that, you know. But then I'll go into the kick and go, right, okay, I've got the kick here. Now what I need to do is I need to saturate it, okay, so that it's the right level. Get that. What can I do to help me reduce that? And then I'll work mixing for loudness, like I might use a duck. and sidechain under 200 hertz. And obviously, I do all this. In the mixing for loudness course, we're going to this real deep, so. You look at that, the sidechain there has taken off 1 dB of that. Remember, if you've got a couple of samples over, it clips digitally, right? So the thing is it's how it sounds, okay? So then I add, and I add. Okay, right. And then if I think, oh no, that is starting to sound a bit distorted, what I will do is, I won't turn it down here. I'll create this submix, which is a group of everything, like that. So everything goes into that. Everything goes into the pre-master, and then the pre-master goes into the submix, and the submix goes into the main. We don't do anything with the submix. It's just there if we need it. So then we can turn it down a dB here or until we lose the distortion. And what I'm doing is, like 2 years ago, I couldn't hear this kind of distortion. Or it's only when I've started mastering and having to really push the master that I'm hearing things breaking up. I can't teach you how to listen for it. Use metric repeat, just do what I've said and concentrate in the certain areas and try and tune in the things on and off. See, it's easy on individual items, right? Because we level match all our plugins, we turn them on and off, and we listen to the difference between the 4 before and the after, okay? But we can't do that here, right? And the reason why we can't do that here is because there is no before and after, because we're mixing, okay? So what we can do is, all we can do is get the level right. So before, when that bass was up there, I can hear there, you know, when you're about -1, that bass is really beginning to distort. Okay, but obviously it's way too loud. So yeah, so that's what I do. I mean, at the moment there's nothing on there, but again, right, how do I mix? Right, so I might want to put a clipper on there. Okay, whatever you use, you might want to put something on. So if you use Ozone, you know, get Ozone, turn it on. Like I like IRC5. Don't use anything else. Okay, you might, if you've got a lot of panning left and right, you might want to use this. Fast and loud. Turn it off and don't do anything, right? And if it makes you feel better, use that. Listen to the color of that or whatever it might do, whatever you use, and then turn it on off. And hear if you can hear any distortion and what it sounds like. Our eyes can tell us that it's really, really bad at 1.56, okay? But, you know, it's a case of, is it bad or is it not bad? You know, we don't know because we're still learning. So you have to trust your ears. But what I do is this, I do this. Okay, so I might like a clipper as well. I like the Ozone, I like the gold clip. Obviously, these are quite expensive plugins, but these are what I use. I might use the gold clip first and then that, because they've got color in these. But you can see that gold clip there is just clipping off those bits that are coming through. But this is the key thing now, guys. You know, what is it actually clipping off? Right, so let's turn off the gold clip, right? And let's put it into Delta mode and listen to what it's doing. Okay, I can hear it that it's hitting the kick, okay? But it doesn't feel like it's distorting. Well, maybe take it down a little bit. Modern mode's better. Yeah, that's fine. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what you want to be watching out for. You know, that there's going to be creating some problems in your mix. So delta mode's really good for doing that. Okay, and then put ozone on, do the same thing. Obviously, it's not doing anything. The reason why it's not doing anything is because the clip has caught all those things there. But let's just turn off gold clip, play it. You know, it's not really hitting anything. So that's quite good. We push it. You can hear that. That's really catching the kick, right? We're losing the punch of our track, distorting the kick, breaking up. It might sound good. Probably not, right? But yeah, so the gain staging, I work into my analog emulations, and then on the master bus, I might put a gold clip or an ozone or nothing. Because you can, as you heard before, you can still hear distortion that's digital, you know. I've seen people say that they prefer, and I've done a video where we bounced it down, and the digital distortion was better than the version with the clipper or the ozone on. So you know, that's for you. Now I will say this: so I've gained stage, I've mixed my track. You know, if it is distorted too much, I turn it down at the submix, okay? Because I like what the plugins are doing, okay? And then I turn it down. And if I can still tune into that distortion, then the distortion's coming from an individual item or a group, okay? And it's generally going to be the combination of a few things together who's doing it, because it's easier to hear it if you're clipping or saturating individual items, and you won't be going into the red. Do you know what I mean? There's no need to go into the red. So I mix the kick in, and then I bring everything in to go with it. And I've got analog emulations, like, which I use a lot of, like on the bass. So I've got the bass here. What I'll do is, what do I like on the bass? Ultra count. Just put it on. Now I know that's meant to be about minus 14 dB, but what I might also do is put on a tape. And I like to like on bass. Tape. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get the bass, you know, and obviously that will probably be on the master bus, but I'll get it to 0, okay? Okay, right, I can see it's too much, okay? It's really going into it. I just want it touching the red, so what I'll do, and I can hear it distorted. So I'll go again, I'll go to the bass, backtrack content, and then I'll turn it down till it's hitting the right level. Let's just say like that, it is pushing it a little bit harder. I'll go to the main. Oh, the dog's just joined us. Go to them. Then I turn it down after the tape. I'll bring this up, okay? And what I'll do is, I'll turn it on and off the tape to hear. I know I'm pushing it, I'm hitting the right level. if it's creating any distortion or anything I don't like for each separate section, okay? Now, it is adding a bit of density there. Now, I've got to tell you this, Slate Digital, a bit naughty really, but it does sound good, right? You should turn it off here because it makes it louder, so you have to turn it off here. It's added a bit of density in the bass area between 10 and 250. Well, I couldn't hear anything up to 80. Low mids. Sounds good. And so on and so on and so on. You go through everything, and now you know that the bass is not distorting, and everything you put onto that bass, you know, I do this with everything, or used to, I'll get my clients to. Excuse me. I do this with everything. A-B it on and off and go through the different frequency ranges to A-B it. The key, and always the key with everything, is that the levels match perfectly. Okay? And that's the trick to it. So now we know it's easy to do it on individual items. It's when you get to your groups, you know, when it gets a little bit harder, and then it gets really hard on your main mix. So I try not to, you know, most of your work is done on the individual items, okay, and the master bus. So it's about using your ears on the master bus. And just try. And if you're not sure, you know, turn it down so it's not clipping, bounce a copy, bring it back into metric A-B, level match, put your master back to 0 and A-B them and see the difference between the two, you know, and see if there is clipping that you can hear, right? And if you can hear a difference, like in the low mids, which is where you hear it a lot of the time, on and off, A-Bing it on and off, then you're starting to train your ears to be able to hear what pushing something a little bit too hard sounds like. Does that make sense? All this is off the cuff here. So I'm just going to look at a few comments for a second. Thank you, Enoch. Looking forward to listening back to this, especially about gain staging for analog emulations. I've heard they need -6 or something. Thanks for the wonderful lesson. Okay, Happy New Year, Major, DJ Major Kate. Analog emulations are meant to be fed a certain thing, and I would just say to you, with most of the ones I'm thinking of, just try and hit the red. But really what you want to be doing is doing with, like I just told you with everything, is pushing it extra hard and pulling it down and seeing which is the best. Just don't go with, oh, it's supposed to be there, right? Because sometimes on some sounds, really pushing it gives it a bit of density and makes it sound really good. You know, let's have a listen to this one. Now that's not working well on the bass. Let's turn it down. I like it there. You know, I'm mixing on headphones. It is really good. Then turn it on and off. The saturation of the tape compression just make it seem like it's a bit more solid. So even though manufacturers have their levels, I still like to push into them separately with analog emulations. Okay, so here's a little something that I was getting wrong actually. So let's talk about dithering. So dithering is something that you use on the very last stage when you're bouncing down something to digital for when it goes to CD. Okay. If you're mastering your own track, the very last thing that you put on in your chain, so whatever it might be, the ozone, that's where you want to dither. So you press dither here, right? Or not both, either there or when you're exporting, dither, no dither, or like R3 is pretty good. It's up to you, right? but I use the Ozone one. I never did that, right? Well, let's just say I've got no mastering plugins and I'm sending it for mastering. Okay. Always have no dither. I mean, I work in 48K, so I always go to what the sample rate I'm working in, and I always go to 32-bit, right? Because for mastering, it's always better to send a highest quality file, okay? And automatically on 32-bit, there's no dither, right? But if you do it for 24-bit, just make sure there's no dither, because your master engineer will do that. Or if they're going into analog like mine guy doesn't need to dither it. So yeah, so that is how I gain stage. I use analog emulations, but you know, I love on my drums. I love the Shadow Hills. Find sets that I like, then I mix into it. I might mess around with it when I think the mix is balanced. But I work to 1 dB. Sometimes I have a tape machine on. Sometimes I've God Particle, depending on what I'll do is I'll get all the sounds together and I'll mix them. I'll get them together. If I'm mixing for somebody else, I'll get the levels right, and then I'll just put stuff on the master bus to see which kind of sounds the best for that particular track. And then I'll mix into that because everything sounds different. You know, I've got loads of plugins, but what do I use really? Any questions, anyone? Because we're going to but what analog emulations do I really use? Right, so I'll tell you what plugins I use for mastering all the time. I use Unisum compressor. Expensive but brilliant. I can get a bit more detail out of this by going down here. Doesn't necessarily always need it, but sometimes it does. Particularly with this multiband detector, I use this a lot. So I can push certain frequencies into the detector of the compressor. So like if I want the snare, if I've got a really loud snare, it's garage track, and a loud hat, I'll turn up the weight that's going into it and turn it down on the kick. You know, the low frequencies and all that kind of stuff. So obviously 150 hertz and then between 150 and 4K. And whatever I want to push, I'll change it and I'll work this. And it's really good. It makes a big difference. Obviously, a normal attack release, and I can make, change the curve on the release, which is really good sometimes when I really want to hear the compression. It's quite advanced, but this is one of the best compressors out there. So that's why I use it. Glue compressor is perfectly good. And then I might use a bit of analog EQ. I like this one. Again, by Tone Projects, Michelangelo. I really like it. Sometimes I use that. Sometimes I use a Dangerous. Sometimes I use Curve Bender. And I might just put that on and then mix into it. And that's it for EQs. That's all I'll do. I'll have a surgical EQ, then I'll have that, I'll have a compressor. I'll generally always mix it to the inflator nowadays. And like I said, have it up to 80% and curve 27. Clip off because it doesn't clip. And then I just mix into it. And that's it, really. And then I might mess around with the curve towards the end. If it's really crushing it, which it won't be, then sometimes I like to bring this down. The Oxford inflator. And then what do you use after the Oxford inflator? Right, so depending on the track, I might try Gullfoss, which is a little bit like Clarity in Ozone, but it's not. This is really good. You generally just use Recover, push it a little bit. What else might I use? Clippers, obviously. So I might use Gold Clip, as you've just seen. I might use Ash Ultra. There's a lot going on with it. It's not as simple to use, so I don't use it as much, but it is good when, I need some clipping that's really kind of not breaking it up. I might spend a bit of time looking at that. And Ozone, and on the Ozone, I might use the stabilizer, just try it, see what it sounds like. Low end focus, try it, see what it sounds like. Clarity, try it, see what it sounds like. you know, and again, same thing, push them to extreme. I might use a bit of exciter sometimes if it's not my track. I'm doing stem mix. Imager, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know me, I like to mix in mono. It's club music's all about mono. So there's that. And then that's it. Obviously the maximizer on the end, I'm really liking the IRC5 at the moment, but I don't always use that. So that's gain staging and how I master as well. So if you're sending your track off to be mastered, do not dither it. Okay. If you're making a DJ master or something else, stick dither on the last plugin here. No, 16-bit is perfectly fine if that's what you're exporting to. If it's a DJ track, 16-bit's fine. I used to do 24-bit. And that's it. So did you enjoy that? Let me know. Any questions for me? Any questions about anything? Okay, I'm going to wrap it up because I'm trying to shorten these sessions a bit more because people don't watch the whole session after. So I think 40 minutes is a good session. We've covered quite a lot about gain staging. We've covered about using your ears and trying to teach yourself how to hear distortion. We've talked about 32-bit float in your channels and 24-bit export on your master. We've spoke about dithering, and we've just spoke about plugins that I use, analog emulations. That for me, I think just make a track. Just they add something to attract the harmonics and the glue that really, really works. They're the ones that work for me. You might prefer things different for you. I'm making a lot of like kind of melodic techno stuff now, and it's all very clean, but I still find that a lot of these plugins, they, you know, the saturation that they provide adds something that just gives it a bit of depth and makes the track sound better, in my opinion. So yes, that's it. Thank you everybody for joining us. I'm not doing tomorrow night, so I'll see you Friday. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for joining. Please leave in the comments. If you want to hit me up regarding my one-to-one mentorship or mixdowns or mastering, info at subtonemusicacademy.com. Thanks for watching and see you soon.